So I decided to make another restoration series, and it's gonna be the worst and best yet, because this really needs all the most difficult and the most annoying repairs I have done so far, and they're all in one guitar. So let me show you. This is really a special guitar though. I think it's should be an Armin Paulus model. See, this headstock is pretty unique. This pickguard is pretty unique, and the previous owner said someone guessed it might also be a Heinz Seifert, but for me it doesn't look like a Heinz Seifert. Maybe the body. I'm not biggest expert on this, so if you have an idea. Anyway, this is some of the finest German archtops made in the 50s. I think there is. It's beautiful and really rare, really well made, or was, but this needs a lot of work to be in decent condition once again. Okay, let me show you all the stuff I will hope to manage doing in these videos, and I have not decided on everything yet because you have to see as it goes. Let me start. This has this usual side access here, also here. It's not, well, it's quite a bit, and that is something really annoying to fix for a start. So then we have a huge separation in the back. So together with the side access, that kind of means I want to take the back off for a start, for sure. Luckily this is already partly separated here. Okay, but we're not done yet. This is a quite skinny neck for 50s. It's not too thin, but it's one of the smaller ones, and of course it had a bit of bow. And I'm pretty sure people were trying to heat bend it before already, and I'm not a fan of that method. And also this fingerboard either already has been sanded flat a bit or not. Anyway, it's pretty thin, so usually I would try to sand it thinner in most cases, but in this case with all this inlays at the end here, and so you really risk sanding through the inlays, and this has an inlay the first fret. What is it? Big problem then, and also around here. So sanding probably isn't available, and heat bending also isn't available, and this is a very collectible guitar, so I really don't want to mess up the visual side of it, because I think this is so rare that I really don't want to change the optic, even if it then plays a bit worse. In this case, it is not a Höfner, but playability and functionality is everything. Okay, anyway, I might take off the fingerboard, but only if that comes off very easy. I will give it a smooth try, and if it makes trouble, I will leave it. Anyway, next problem child here is, this had a pretty bad neck reset. You can still see some glue here, and this looks like this kind of glue that you don't want to see here. And the neck angle of course is wrong, so someone took it off and used the wrong glue and put it back in the wrong angle. Yay, that's a shame really. So if and also this heel, the neck heel here looks to be re-glued. It looks stable, but if I manage to pull off the fretboard, for example, I could then add screws here under the fretboard as support. So that would be a plus. If I manage to pull off the fretboard also, I could add carbon fiber rods here, but that's a big question mark. Okay, what else did we have? This apparently had a pickup added once, probably a relock from a size of it. So maybe I will find a relock and add it later. This has really funny carvings in the fretboard. You can see someone wrote in here all the notes. That has to go, but that's not a big problem, I think. We'll see, actually. Some light sanding will do. Am I done? Maybe. One thing to this guitar, the back looks quite a bit lighter than the front, and the sides are somewhat in the middle, I would say. I'm not sure if that had a light extra coat of shellac. I think this is I'm pretty sure this is shellac finish. And I do love how this old shellac finishes look like. I really don't want to change the finish. So we have to see how we fix that crack when we get to it. Well, there's separations here already. The back is partly coming off. That's a good sign because the binding and the back seem to be of the same thickness. In some guitars the binding is kind of overlapping the glue joint and then you can't get a knife in there. And then it's a huge mess. But I hope in this case it will just come off together. I am starting this video with unknown success, and I will upload the first part before it's done. So I'm kind of all in. Also the top here is separating, the side is separating from the neck block, for example. This guitar needs a lot of work. But I'm confident this was at least assembled with hide glue, and it's old hide glue, so I think this assembly should be working out, hopefully. The big question is, can we get off the fretboard? Alright, and we have to think about what to do first. Because, for example, you don't want to take off the neck first and putting it back on, and then taking off the back and putting it back on. It might change the neck angle once again slightly if you do that. So I would probably try to take off the fretboard first, because if that works out, I have more options. Then I can use heat sticks through this joint without melting the plastic and so on. And I will probably take off the fretboard if I can. If I'm not able to take off the fretboard, I have to think about how to get at this neck anyway. Then probably I can put the heat sticks in here. Yes, okay. Good, we'll be able. Okay, let's see how it goes. Okay, now I'm taking everything off. I will make a copy of this pickguard, and in case anyone ever needs it or ever need it again. These are very fitting screws here. You can see here it's already starting to separate partly. It's a very nice pickguard, I like it. And here you can see the construction of the pickguard with, I think, 3 layers, laminate and plastic on top. Some decent condition. And here was already some experimentation with pickups, I'm pretty sure. These were the screws in there. Yeah, it's not a good choice. It's like from a floor, I don't know, it's not guitar screws. Okay, I just want to check now if I'll be able to easily take off the fretboard. I have taken off plenty of fretboards by now, and I experienced everything from done in a few seconds without heat and no problems to the opposite, like a lot of heat, long time problems. So I just wanna, if I manage to take this off now, it would be huge help and it would make things easier. But I really don't want to put too much heat on all this plastic stuff. And I also don't want to take off this plastic, the binding and everything, because it will probably shrink a lot and then will not really fit properly anymore, and it would be a lot of, it's hard to access. So I will just see what happens now if there's a little separation on this side already. I will just see what happens if I put on a knife. I don't know, just see what happens, what kind of stuff it is. It's cracking now a bit. This has to be re-glued anyway. Well, you have to be very careful not to get into the wood line. It's not easy, but it's doing a little. So, so still don't know. Maybe I'll try to heat up the knives a bit, try a different one. I'll just clean them, because usually when you do this with heat you have still glue left over on the blades. This is, I have to, no, I think this will not work like the easy way like I hoped. Try to get in here. But if I manage to get this part off, crack, that's a good sign. Okay, I'll just now see if I can very carefully, this probably glued on with hide glue, crack this off without heat, but only with little force. You cannot really, yes, look, that's good. Okay, this is high risk, high reward, but I think if I'm very careful, I might, usually this kind of hide glue lines just crack open, and there's usually not really tear out or anything too much. And if I have a little bit of tear out, I will be fine with it, just, because this is the least intrusive way to get this off still, I think. But I remember now something that I often tend to forget, and then it's annoying afterwards. We have to pull 2 frets and drill holes for position markers, one at the start, one at the end. So when we re-glue the fretboard, there's 2 pins that really put this fretboard in the right position. Once you have glue on there, it will slide around. And now it's positioned perfectly, so this is the time to take off. Anyway, these frets have to be taken out sooner or later because they're dead. So I will carefully take out, for example, this one. We'll see how they're in there. If I would notice now that they're glued in, what I don't, you would have to use heat, of course. But this could be this kind of shitty vintage thread without real tang on their foot. This is smooth tang. But since this wood kind of feels brittle, I would try to score this. I don't think these are the original threads, but hard to tell. Might be. They're done now. Look, they just hammered the tang in there themselves, I think. It's just flat. And this is why they're easy to remove without damage. Okay, and the second. Usually, if you plan to take off the fretboard, it's a good idea to leave the threads in. Because if you use some kind of iron or heat to, you know, like a cloth iron or so, you can put it on the threads and it will not touch the fretboard and burn it. But I am hopeful at this point that this fretboard will actually come off without heat. Let me shoot. And now I will just... So my plan is later to put in 2 or 3 strips of carbon fiber in here. And of course now I have to choose the position of the pin wisely, because there might be exactly where the strips would be then later and I couldn't use them. So usually if I take 3, I would use 1 here in the middle, 1 here and 1 here somewhere. But certainly not at very side. So I could try to put this pin here and hope it would be in the middle of the... Actually 2 would probably be enough. I think 3 might be overkill. But still, overkill is alright. What is not right is have too little. Because if this has already been done, it's not much more work to put in the 3rd one. So I think I go... This is a nice D shape and it's really just straight down here. So I can actually get away with putting the pinch on the side, the pin. So 1 here. And 1 here on the other side. I have this little weak setup for the small holes with just a bit, 1.5 millimeter, and it's hard to really drill too deep too quickly with this. It's very light touch. Here, 1. And then have one that broke off. It's kind of dead stop because it's so short. Whoop. Okay. So here's a hole, and then you have all this fancy extra inlays with the notes. And here's one. And see, these threads are really past any fret leveling. I would do that later. I will probably do that when the fretboard is already back on the neck. Okay, and now we'll just very carefully and slowly try to remove this fretboard without damages. This is the most uncertain operation of the whole thing. When I manage to do this, everything else should work out. Let's see. I will slowly work my way through it without breaking anything, hopefully. Sometimes it cracks a bit here, but it's always a glue line. There's usually some points on every fretboard when you remove it where it's really sticky and it doesn't want to go further, and then afterwards you have a few frets where it just slides right through. So on this point where it's sticky, you just have to be patient. I mean, usually I would use heat, and even then you have to be patient. So this is very clean so far, so it's promising. Look, there's constantly pressure on the joint now because the knife is forcing it up. So click. Yeah, there's something happened. And I just want to be patient here, because 1 minute impatient will save me probably an hour of, or even more later, of repairs. Okay, I will just use a little bit of heat to heat up the blade, not the fretboard. It might make a small difference. It doesn't hurt. Not too much, a bit. Yeah, that's already halfway through. So hopes are high. Whoa. A very nice clean separation so far. And here is the glue line. And this is one thing when working on guitars. On another guitar this would never work. But just because I see many of those joints here are separating on their own already anyway, I'm trying this. And if you manage to get away with this, you just have options and you save a lot of time that you otherwise couldn't. But every guitar is unique in that way, that you really have to see what you find and how to deal with it. And because there's really no standard way of restoring guitars often. Okay, I came to a point here where on this side it just doesn't want to progress at the usual speed. I heated it up again, and you have to resist the temptation of just pressing harder, because the end is near already, and I know this will be a great moment when this comes off. Oh, you know, it comes a bit. But I'm not done yet, so I always just give it a bit of time to weaken the joint, and slowly it goes. Ah, yeah, now we made some progress. Okay. I think this is Rio rosewood actually. Not sure. Okay, here's another problem point, and this probably the last problem point. Fingers crossed. I'll leave the camera on now just to have this glorious moment when it comes off on camera. Of course. I'm just trying to wiggle. I'm not trying to push too much. And actually it works pretty well. Crack. Okay, now be careful that the nut is not glued to the end of a fretboard, but I think it looks good. Okay, this is one of the start and the end are the moments of where you have to pay attention the most. The start was easy here, luckily. And the binding here is still glued to the nut, so we have to cut. Okay. Voila. I think there's not a single fiber that's separated. And actually there is some pencil marks on here. Hard to tell what they mean. Also here are some, hard to see with camera. Is that a Paulus P? I don't know. The cool thing here is you can really just put it on top and it wanna stay exactly where it should stay. This is almost, usually they wanna separate in any kind of way and you have to sand them to fit again. What will probably happen here slightly is that this binding will shrink a bit and we might have a tiny I don't know, excess here somewhere. We'll see. The next question is now, do I leave this nut on? And I think the question must be no, because I can't fit on my router jig if this is on here. Okay, removing a nut that is glued onto this binding and all this plastic here. If they use some kind of acetone or so to glue it, and it might really be bonded to this. So it is dangerous. I really scored around it with a knife, and now we'll see what happens if we knock it. Not much. Okay, I have to clamp this here so the shock works better if it doesn't move. This corner is dark and messy, so try to get that off camera. I will knock it one more, and if not, I will have to use some heat. Okay, this was what I was actually trying to talk about. I managed to remove the whole fretboard without any kind of chip out or so. But and here I really tried hard, but it was glued on like crazy here in this little gap. I don't know. It's alright. Okay, now I tried to re-glue this little piece with super glue. It's not important, I would say. It's not visible, but it doesn't take time either. Then press it down with a Teflon. Okay, what is the next step now? You always have to think a few steps ahead, because my intuition was to take off the neck. Now can just drill through here with 2 heat sticks and hope that the neck comes off. But since my aim is to root in some channels through here, I think I'm going to do this first, because the neck is still attached to the body, and that actually helps when I put on this rooting jig, because then this lays better and flat and more stable. I can put clamps on here so it doesn't move. But of only the neck, it gets actually more complicated. So I'm gonna root the 3 channels first, and then drill through here, maybe even through the channels, into the mortise and tenon joint. There's no screws inside. I checked through the holes, and then, you know, take the neck off, and then put in the carbon fiber strips when the neck is off. I think it's a good plan. Okay, just to give an idea, this is a bow without a fretboard and without strings on. Okay, before I root this, or before I install everything, I want to check 2 things, or I have to do 2 things. Like, this neck has a bit of a bow, and when I put my jig on, the channel will of course be deeper on the points where it bows up than here. But isn't that all that terrible, because I plan to the carbon fiber has to be a little bit into the wood, so I can sand over it afterwards. And I checked now, and pretty much all of the bend is actually on this, on the tongue here. So when I will re-glue the fretboard, and when I will put in, no, actually when I put in these things, I will, now mostly when I re-glue the fretboards, because carbon fiber will only go until here roughly, I will then wedge this down so there's a bit of fall away over the body. So I think I can root this as it is. I don't have to straighten it first or so. And then the other thing is where to exactly route the 3 channels, and we have already this multi-laminated neck that gives me a pretty good path. There's 3 darker areas here, and I'm just gonna follow those. That makes it kind of easy to mark the end and the start for me. And I will route 3 inserts on this darker strips. Why not? I built myself this routing jig from aluminium with, can put it on most necks, or so far on all. I can adjust where it sits over the neck, and this black stuff here is a rubber. It's very soft so it doesn't damage the neck. And on top sits the router. An hour later, we have now 3, I went a bit too far here, 3 channels for the carbon rods. Ta-da! I didn't film this because I think we already filmed something like this in my last video, and it's for me it's one of the most stressing things to do. I went until I went as far as I could here basically. And these rods that I ordered are anyway quite a bit too long, so I have to shorten them, and then I will be fitting them to these individual channels. So it doesn't really matter if they're a bit longer or shorter here. Yippee! Okay, the next thing to do would be for now to take the neck off. The neck, the fretboard will be the, I don't know, someone has been on here with some questionable glue, looks like, and this is a tricky part. So before I want to take the neck off, actually I want to try to secure this neck here with 2 bolts from up here. There's still space but I'm really running out of space here, because I also still want to drill 2 holes for the heat sticks here, so the screws can go here. Here's a little hole for the pin that has to stay free. So there will be a lot going on this region, and you have to plan ahead where to do what, so there's still space for everything, and it works out later. So next thing I want to do, because when I take off this neck already had some kind of dodgy neck reset, and it looks like the heel broke off and was re-glued, and it doesn't look worrisome to me. It looks like a good solid repair, though it's not that pretty. But the last thing I want is this to open up again when I take off the neck, and I have to wiggle at least a bit, and it will put stress on this glue joint here, and so I want it to be as strong as I can before I go down that road. Okay, so Now I will drill 2 holes here and secure the neck heel to the neck basically with 2 bolts. Okay, this is hopefully secured. Okay, now I will drill the holes for the heat sticks. One here, one here. Should do, hopefully. Okay, now I drilled 2 holes here for the heat stick and put them in and wait 10 minutes. After 10 minutes I see if something starts moving and where I need more heat. And if I need more heat, I will still get my heat gun for this area, but you have to be careful with the plastic here. Also there's this kind of glue, so I need to score a bit of line here and here probably. Can do that when this heating up. Also I cover these screw holes with some balsa wood so there's no glue coming on the screw when I put on the fretboard. I also want to put a little bit of water on the glue joints, not too much, just to take any chance. I might soften it up a bit in here. That also generates a bit of steam. When you put in water, the sticks sometimes a bit difficult to get out again. And I have this heat stick in for a few minutes now. And when I push here, you can already feel that the upper part here is already starting to come loose. But down here at the heel will be the less heat. So here is not warm at all yet. And I will probably I scored here with a knife, got rid of most of the glue that was out here. And in a few minutes I will start heating the bottom area here with a heat gun additionally, and carefully because here's plastic everywhere. This is kind of glue, I'm not sure if it's just normal white glue or crap. I don't know if it softens underwater, I think not much, but under heat apparently. I'm just gently moving this a bit to get the water through the joint, and it's already starting to move. You shouldn't push too much. I'll try to get water in the under here. And now pump it in the joint carefully. Oh, this thing is already starting to come out. Great. Okay. I try to do this here on camera. I usually would take it in my hands, but this will come out now. Hopefully without any problems. See here, it's already off mostly. Ta-da! Ta-da! And the best time to take out the old glue is kind of now. I will grab the bigger parts off. Oh. And then I will use, I like to use the glue goo from StuMag on this operations where you want to remove as little wood as possible. Because you have to remove the glue and also some wood to be able to properly glue this back on. But the more glue you take away, the bigger the shims will have to be again, and so it's some kind of balancing act. Okay. Here's the little piece of binding that I want to save if I can, but I am actually not sure if that will be visible. I guess not. And it's just half of it anyway. Oh, I'm not sure what it is. This part here. Anyway, I think what happened here in this last neck reset is that whoever did that didn't really clean off the previous glue. They just put more glue on top. I think they put like white glue on top of height glue. You can still see it here, this brown below. I guess that is probably height glue on the other stuff. And of course it doesn't hold too well. So in this case I was lucky. Okay, this is now covered in some kind of, I think the glue goo, some kind of vinegar based stuff, I'm not sure. I've never ever had seen doing any kind of trouble to finish, and this area has to be touched up anyway, so I don't have a problem with it running around a bit. I've used this on all kind of finishes and so far I've never had any issues. This has now to soak 20 minutes, half an hour, and then all this glue is pretty soft and you can scrape it off more easily. Okay, Now I made the first round of cleaning. This was covered in the glue goo and then I scraped it. I scraped off as much as I could, and now I would do a sanding before I put it back on, but they're still far away. Putting the neck back on will be one of the last steps of this whole thing. And this will be the, I think, end of the first part of the series. It's a good time to stop here. Like you can see the solid top here. Some mysterious imprints. I managed to hit this joint pretty well with the heat sticks. Okay, thanks for watching for a start. This journey is far from over, but so far I'm pretty happy. I managed to take off the fretboard without any damage. It's waiting here. The neck is off, the channels are routed. Some of the most concerning things have been done successfully. All right, thank you.